The sky above Epsilon 9 was never truly dark. Not with the gas giant Erebos hanging like a rust-colored god in the heavens, its swirling storms glowing faintly even at night. Below it, the human colony clung to the surface of a rocky moon small, tough, and full of stubborn people who had chosen to live on the edge of known space. Epsilon 9 was not a military base. It was a science outpost and a mining hub. Most of the 600 souls living there were geologists, engineers, doctors, and support staff. A few wore security uniforms, but their weapons were meant for dealing with rock slides or malfunctioning drones. Not war. That changed on the morning of Cycle 217. Alarms screamed across the colony at 4:32 Standard Time. Not the usual maintenance alerts, but the deep, pulsing wail of Invasion Protocol Alpha, a sound no one had ever heard outside of drills. People stumbled from their quarters in pajamas and boots, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Above them, the sky tore open, not with fire, not with light, but with silence. Then, shapes. Dozens of them. Sleek silver-gray ships, shaped like curved blades, slid out of warp space without a sound. They moved with cold precision, forming a perfect ring around the colony's orbital defense station. That station had one job: fire a single railgun shot at any unknown vessel that came too close. It never got the chance. A beam of violet energy lanced out from the lead alien ship. The defense station exploded in a flash so bright it turned night into day for 3 seconds. Debris rained down like black snow. On the surface, Dr. Lyra Chun froze in the medbay doorway, a child's fever tablet still in her hand. She looked up just as the first dropship screamed overhead, a howling metal bird that shook the ground with its passage. Dust flew. Windows cracked. Somewhere, a dog barked once, then fell silent. The invaders came fast. They called themselves the Jarkan Hegemony. They had conquered 37 star systems. Their empire stretched across 1,000 light years. To them, humanity was a curiosity, loud, chaotic, and strangely aggressive for a species that still used fire and metal. They had studied human history. They saw war after war, plague after plague, yet humans never stopped. They bred like insects, fought like cornered wolves, and somehow kept spreading. The Jarkan didn't fear them. They pitied them, and pity made them careless. Commander Vex Tor of the Jarkan 3rd Spear Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, Sword of Unity, watching Epsilon 9 burn on the main display. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, his scaled face unreadable. "Minimal resistance," he said. "Just as predicted." His second-in-command, Ensign Krell, nodded. Scans show less than 24 armed personnel. No capital ships within 3 parsecs. This will be over before dinner cycle. Vex allowed himself a thin smile. Good. Secure the biolab. The High Council wants their gene mapping data. And round up the survivors. Healthy specimens make excellent laborers. Below, chaos ruled. Security Chief Marcus Boone fired his pulse rifle into the legs of a Jarkan soldier. The alien staggered, its armor smoking, but didn't fall. It turned, its face a mask of bone-like plating, and raised a weapon that hive of angry bees. Boone didn't wait. He tackled a young engineer named Jin and rolled behind a collapsed storage crate, just as a plasma bolt melted the spot where they'd stood. "They're everywhere." Jin yelled, voice cracking. His hand shook as he gripped a mining laser, useless against armor, but better than nothing. Boone checked his ammo counter. 12 shots left. Then we make every shot count. They weren't soldiers. None of them were. But on Epsilon 9, you learned fast or you died. You fixed broken air recyclers in vacuum suits. You fought off rock worms in the lower tunnels. You knew how to keep going when the odds said you shouldn't. That was the human way. In the central comms hub, A woman named Elena Rostova worked frantically. Her fingers flew over the console, ignoring the tremors shaking the floor. Around her, alarms blared, lights flickered, and smoke curled from a burning server rack. She wasn't trying to call for help. Not ordinary help. She was activating the priority Omega SOS. It was a last resort signal, buried deep in Earth's emergency protocols. Every human colony had it. Every ship carried it. But it hadn't been used in over 50 years. Not since the Titan conflict. Elena typed the final code with bloodied fingers. She'd cut her hand on shattered glass and hit send. The beacon pulsed once. Then again. Then it shot outward at faster than light speed, wrapped in layers of encryption only one species would recognize. The Jarkan detected the signal, of course. But they didn't understand it. Their analysts flagged it as a standard distress call, weak, desperate, and meaningless. No fleet would come. No one dared challenge the hegemony. One of their officers even laughed. Let them cry into the void. No one is listening. But someone was. Far away, in the heart of Sol System, machines heard the call. Old machines. Waiting machines. Machines that remembered every insult, every ship lost. Every colony burned. And deep in Earth's orbital command center, a single red light began to blink on a wall that hadn't lit up in decades. Back on Epsilon 9. The colony was falling. The Jarkan moved through the streets like ghosts in silver armor. Their weapons cut through bulkheads like paper. They rounded up survivors in glowing energy pens, their voices calm, their actions efficient. They took the labs. They took the power core. They took everything. But they missed one thing. In a hidden bunker beneath the geothermal plant, a small group of humans, 12 in all, watched through grainy camera feeds as their home was stripped bare. Among them was Dr. Chun, Security Chief Boone, and Elena, her hand bandaged now. They think it's over, Boone said, loading his last magazine. Elena nodded. They don't know what the SOS really means. Dr. Chun looked at the children, huddled in the corner, 3 of them, all under 10. What if no one comes? Boone met her eyes. They'll come. He didn't say how. He didn't need to. Every human child grew up hearing the same stories about Earth, the Death World, about oceans full of monsters, skies full of fire, land that tried to kill you every day, and how humans didn't just survive it, they thrived. And when someone hurt their own, they came, not as diplomats, not as peacekeepers. As a storm. Above, a Jarkan officer walked through the ruined comms hub, kicking aside broken consoles. He stopped at the main terminal, where the SOS beacon's light still glowed faintly. He tapped it with a clawed finger, a final whimper. He said to no one. He didn't see the tiny sub-frequency buried inside the signal. A code so old it predated the United Earth government. A code that said only one thing. Deathworlders protocol activated. Outside, the gas giant Erebos glowed red in the sky, casting long shadows over the broken colony. The wind howled through shattered buildings. The Jarkan began loading their spoils onto their ships, confident in their victory. They had won the battle, but they had just started the war. The signal from Epsilon 9 raced through the stars like a whisper in a silent room. It moved faster than light, wrapped in codes older than most human cities. It passed through empty space, past dead comets and sleeping asteroids, past the ghost ships of old wars, and into the busy lanes of the galaxy. Many heard it. Outposts on icy moons scanned it and shrugged. Trade fleets logged it and moved on. A few alien governments noted it with pity, another young species crying for help they would never get. The Jarkan hegemony had made their message clear: cross them and vanish. Most chose to stay quiet, but one place did not stay quiet. In the Sol System, far from the edge of known space, the signal hit a listening post near Jupiter. The machine there did not think. It did not feel fear or hope. It only knew one rule. If this exact code came through, wake the fleet. Lights flickered on in dark rooms that had not seen daylight in years. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, vault doors slid open with a hiss. On the moon, hidden docks began to hum. Around Neptune, silent ships powered up their engines for the first time in a decade. Aboard the UNSC Valkyrie, orbiting high above Earth, Captain Aris Thorne stood on the command deck. He was tall, lean, with eyes that had seen too many funerals. He had just finished his morning coffee when the red alert lit up every screen. "Priority Omega SOS confirmed," said the AI voice, calm but urgent. "Source, Epsilon 9, sub-frequency match, Deathworlders protocol." The room went still. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Thorne didn't speak for 10 seconds. Then he said, "Sound the call." On every human world, in every shipyard, in every hidden base, the call went out. Not over public channels. Not with fanfare. Just a single pulse sent through secure military lines. Protocol active. All units respond. On Earth, a farmer in the Amazon basin dropped his tools and ran to his garage. Inside was a sealed locker. He opened it, pulled out a worn uniform, and kissed his daughter's forehead before walking out the door. In the slums of old Mumbai, a teenage hacker wiped her screens clean, grabbed a backpack, and vanished into the subway tunnels where a waiting dropship hummed in the dark. On Luna, Marines who had been drilling in zero-gravity simulators paused. Their instructor looked at his wristcom, nodded once, and said, "Gear up." Real mission. No one asked why. No one needed to. They all knew what the Deathworlders protocol meant. It wasn't just a signal. It was a promise. A promise that if one human cried for help, all would answer. Not later. Not when it was safe. Now back on the Valkyrie, Thorne watched as fleet status boards lit up one by one. Ships reported in from places no alien map showed. The Iron Mule from the Kuiper Belt, the Ghosts of Titan, a stealth squadron, thought lost. Even the old Red Star, a relic from the Martian Wars, sent a simple message: ready. The human fleet was not like other fleets. Alien armadas moved in perfect lines, like dancers following a script. Human ships? They moved like packs of wild dogs, fast, loud, and full of teeth. Some ships jumped to warp before full diagnostics ran. Others overloaded their engines just to shave minutes off travel time. One captain welded extra missile pods to his hull with plasma torches while in flight. Rules didn't matter now. Only speed. Only rage. Deep in the command center on Earth, the president of the unified human government stared at a star map. Epsilon 9 blinked in red. Around it, Jarkan ships glowed like flies on a corpse. "Do we have enough?" she asked, voice low. Her general didn't look up. "We have them." She nodded. She knew what he meant. Humanity had spent centuries building defenses. Yes, but also something else. Something darker. After first contact, humans learned they were seen as strange, violent, and unstable. Their planet was called a death world because of its storms, predators, diseases, and extremes. Most aliens thought it was a weakness. Humans knew better. They turned it into strength. Every soldier trained in jungles, full of venomous snakes. Every pilot learned to fly in hurricane-force winds. Engineers built ships that could work, even after taking damage that would cripple alien vessels. Humans didn't need perfect conditions. They thrived in chaos. And now, chaos was coming for the Jarkan, out in the void. The first wave of human ships tore through slipspace near the edge of the Ouroboros system. They didn't arrive quietly. They didn't form neat lines. They burst out like shrapnel from a bomb fire spinning, cruisers roaring, engines burning hot and loud. The Jarkan sensors lit up in panic. "What is this?" shouted a Jarkan officer on patrol. Scans show hundreds of contacts, all human. But their fleet wasn't this big. It can't be, another said. We studied their ship production. They don't have this many warships. But they were wrong. Humanity had hidden their true strength. Not out of fear, but for moments like this. They let others think they were weak. Let them believe humans were just another noisy species to be tamed. Now, the mask was off. On the Valkyrie, Thorn gripped the edge of his command chair. Send the message, he said. The comms officer typed quickly. Then, across all open channels, in every language Earth had ever learned, the words blasted out. To the Jarkan hegemony. You have harmed our people. You have taken what is ours. Stand down now, or be erased. There was no reply. The Jarkan flagship powered up its main weapon. They still believed they could win. They still thought humans would hesitate. That they would negotiate. They did not understand. Humans did not send warnings to be polite. They sent them so their enemy knew what was coming. And what was coming was not a fleet. It was vengeance with engines. Back on Earth, in a small classroom in Nairobi, a teacher stood before her students. Outside, ships lifted off in fiery columns, heading for the stars. The children watched through the window, eyes wide. Why are they going? Asked a small boy. The teacher smiled sadly. Because someone hurt our family. And on Earth, we protect family. She didn't tell them about the blood that would be spilled. She didn't need to. They would learn soon enough, as all humans did, that peace was bought with steel, and safety with sacrifice. In orbit, the last of the reserve ships jumped to warp. These were not fancy vessels. They were old freighters with guns bolted on, mining rigs turned into bombers, medical ships loaded with Marines instead of medics. They were ugly, rough, and full of people who knew how to fight dirty. One ship, the Roughneck, carried a crew of former asteroid miners. Their captain, a woman named Jessa Cole, grinned as she armed her ship's railgun cluster. Let's show these shiny bastards what a real Deathworld looks like, she said. Miles away, the Valkyrie led the main force. Thorn stared at the view screen. Epsilon 9 was ahead. So were the Jarkan. So was the Storm. He thought of his brother, who died in the border skirmishes 10 years ago. Of the colonies lost. Of the quiet promise every human child made without saying it. No one hurts us and walks away. Full burn, he ordered. All ships, weapons hot. Let's go home. And with that, the human fleet wild, furious, an unstoppable charge toward Epsilon 9. Not as victims. Not as beggars, but as the children of a world that killed weaker things every day and made them strong. The galaxy would remember this moment, not because of the ships, but because of what they carried. 6 billion voices saying the same thing. You should not have done that. The Jarkan fleet floated around Epsilon 9 like proud birds after a feast. Their ships gleamed under the red light of the gas giant Erebos. Music played softly on their command decks. Officers sipped spiced tea and discussed how many human slaves they would ship back to the hegemony core. Victory felt soft in their hands, easy, clean, complete. Then the sky broke. It didn't happen with a warning. One moment, space was calm. The next, it tore open like rotten cloth. Not in one place, but in dozens. Then hundreds. Human ships poured out, not in neat lines, but in screaming swarms. Fighters shot ahead like angry hornets. Cruisers barreled through asteroid belts without slowing. A massive carrier, its hull patched with old battle scars, dropped out of warp so close to a Jarkan patrol that their shields scraped together with a shriek of metal. Admiral Kale VR stood frozen on the bridge of his flagship. The Sword of Unity. His 4 eyes widened. Impossible, he whispered. Their fleet. It's 3 times larger than our records show. His second-in-command stared at the tactical screen, voice shaking. They're not following formation. They're charging straight at us. And they were. The first human strike hit like a hammer. A squadron of fighters nicknamed Wasp Packs, for their buzzing engines slammed into a Jarkan destroyer. They didn't fire missiles first. They flew so close, so fast, that their wing-mounted plasma cutters sliced through the alien hull like knives through fruit. Then, as they pulled away, they launched short-range nukes into the open wounds. The destroyer exploded in a silent bloom of fire. On the Valkyrie, Captain Thorne gripped his chair as alarms blared. All ships, go loud and go hard. No mercy, no retreat. What followed was not battle. It was chaos with teeth. Human ships used tricks the Jarkan had never seen. One freighter turned its cargo bay into a trap, flooding it with gas, then luring a Jarkan boarding party inside before sealing the doors and igniting the mix. Another ship, the Roughneck, fired its mining lasers not at weapons, but at enemy sensor arrays, blinding them before closing in for the kill. The Jarkan, trained for orderly combat, panicked. Their perfect lines fell apart. Ships collided trying to reposition. Orders got lost in the noise. Their weapons were powerful but slow to charge. Human fighters danced around them, striking fast, then vanishing into debris fields down on Epsilon 9. Survivors watched from hidden bunkers as the sky turned into a storm of fire and metal. Dr. Chun held a child close as explosions lit up the horizon. Are those ours? The boy asked, eyes wide. Yes, she said, voice thick. They came. In another part of the colony, Security Chief Boone grinned for the first time in days. He watched a human dropship painted with a skull and the words, "Sorry, we're late," crash land near the main Jarkan command post. Doors blew open. Marines poured out, not in neat steps, but in a yelling, shooting wave. Some carried rifles. Others swung wrenches or fire axes. One carried a jury-rigged flamethrower made from a fuel line and spark igniter. They didn't ask for surrender. They didn't give warnings. They just fought. On the Jarkan flagship, Admiral Vars finally understood. This wasn't just a rescue. This was punishment. They're not trying to win, he said, voice hollow. They're trying to erase us. His XO looked at him, pale under his scales. What do we do? Viors turned to the view screen. A massive human battleship, the Iron Mule, was charging straight at them, engines flaring red hot. It had lost half its armor, but it didn't slow. It didn't dodge. It just came. Brace for impact, Vera said. The Iron Mule didn't fire its main guns. It didn't need to. At the last second, it veered just enough and slammed its reinforced prow into the Sword of Unity's port side. Metal screamed. Atmosphere blew out in frozen clouds. The bridge tilted violently. Alarms howled. Lights died. Gravity failed for 3 seconds, sending crew members floating into the ceiling. When it came back, Viors found himself on the floor, blood dripping from his temple. Through the cracked view screen, he saw more human ships arriving. Not just warships, salvage tugs, medical vessels, even old cargo haulers, all armed, all angry. One ship broadcast a message on open channel, not in Galactic Standard, but in plain, rough English. You touched our people. Now you meet the whole damn family. Below, on the surface, the tide turned. Jarkan guards, once confident, now looked up in fear as human dropships circled like hawks. Some tried to retreat to their landing zones. Others surrendered. The humans didn't care. They tore through defenses with raw fury. A young engineer named Jin, who had once hidden behind a crate with a mining laser, now stood on a rooftop. firing a stolen Jar-Can pulse rifle into a squad of retreating soldiers. His hands didn't shake any more. In the main lab, Elena Rostova led a group of freed colonists through smoke-filled halls. They carried tools, pipes, even kitchen knives, but they moved like soldiers. When they found the Jar-Can officer trying to delete data from the main server, Elena didn't hesitate. She hit him with a fire extinguisher until he stopped moving. "We keep our work," she said, voice cold. "It's ours." Back in space, the battle reached its peak. The Jar-Can fleet was broken. Half their ships were gone. The rest were burning or fleeing. But the humans didn't chase the runners. They focused on those who stayed, the ones who had overseen the invasion. Captain Thorn watched as the Valkyrie's railguns tore through the last Jar-Can cruiser. "No prisoners," he said quietly. "Not this time." It wasn't cruelty. It was message. The galaxy needed to learn. Hurt humans and you don't get a second chance. You get a funeral. One by one, Jar-Can ships fell silent. Explosions faded. The sky cleared, leaving only drifting wreckage and human ships, battered but alive. On the bridge of the Roughneck, Captain Jessica wiped sweat from her brow and laughed. "Told you they'd regret messing with us." Her crew cheered, exhausted but proud. On Epsilon 9, the last Jar-Can soldier dropped his weapon. A group of colonists surrounded him. They didn't shoot. They just stared cold, hard, and unblinking. The alien lowered his head. He knew what that look meant. It wasn't hatred. It was judgment. Above, the human fleet formed a loose ring around the moon. Not tight. Not threatening to the humans below. But a shield. A promise. They had come fast. They had come hard. And they would stay as long as needed. In the command center of the Valkyrie, Thorn received a message from Earth. Just 2 words. "Well done." He didn't smile. He just nodded and looked out at the broken battlefield. The Jar-Can had thought this would be easy. They thought humans were loud but weak. That their planet's dangers had made them fragile. They were wrong. Earth didn't make humans weak. It made them ready. And now, the galaxy knew. Out there, in the dark between stars, other species watched the battle logs. Saw how humans fought. Saw how they came without asking, without waiting, without fear. One alien diplomat on the Galactic Council turned to his aide and said, "We must never, ever, make them angry again." But it was too late for the Jar-Can. Their easy triumph had ended. Now, the reckoning began. The fighting stopped, but the work had just begun. Smoke still rose from Epsilon 9's broken buildings. The air smelled of burnt metal, ozone, and something sharp. Fear, maybe, or relief. Humans moved through the ruins like ghosts at first, then with purpose. They carried stretchers, water cans, welding torches, and rifles. Some cried. Most did not. They had no time. The Jar-Can were gone. Not just defeated, erased. Their ships were molten husks floating in orbit. Their soldiers were either dead or locked in shielded holding cells, guarded by Marines with cold eyes and no pity. The few who tried to escape were cut down without warning. The humans had made their point. There would be no second chances. In the central plaza, once a garden with fake grass and solar lamp survivors gathered. Children sat wrapped in thermal blankets. Old men shared bottles of water. A woman with a bandaged arm held up a broken photo of her family and whispered, "We made it." Then they saw them. From the edge of the colony, the first human Marines appeared. Not in perfect uniforms. Many wore patched armor, mismatched helmets, or even civilian clothes with ammo belts strapped over them. Their faces were dirty, their eyes tired, but their steps were strong. One Marine, a young woman with a scar across her nose, knelt beside a child and handed her a candy bar from her pocket. "Earth mint chocolate," she said with a tired smile. "Best in the system." The child blinked. You came from Earth? Nah, the Marine said, ruffling her hair. We came from everywhere. But yeah, Earth sent us. That was enough. All across Epsilon 9. Humans hugged soldiers they'd never met. Some cried. Some just stood, staring at the sky, as if making sure the nightmare was really over. But not everyone was resting. In the command bunker, beneath the geothermal plant, Captain Thorne stood with Security Chief Boone and Dr. Chun. Maps glowed on the wall. Reports poured in from orbit and surface teams. They want to talk, Boone said, tossing a datapad on the table. The Jarkan High Council. They sent a message begging for peace talks. Thorne didn't look up. Tell them to wait. They're offering full surrender, Dr. Chun added softly. Reparations? Return of all stolen tech. Even prisoner exchange. This time, Thorne looked at her. They took 600 of ours. Killed over 200. Enslaved children. Burned homes. And now they say sorry? His voice wasn't loud, but it was hard, like stone. Dr. Chun nodded. She understood. So did Boone. Peace wasn't just about stopping the war. It was about making sure it never happened again. Later that day, a single human ship, the Valkyrie, broadcast a message across every known channel. Not just to the Jarkan. To everyone. We do not speak for the galaxy, Captain Thorne said, his face calm but his eyes sharp. We speak for humanity. If you harm one of ours on any world, in any system, you answer to all of us. We do not wait for courts. We do not ask for votes. We come, and we do not stop until justice is done. The message played on repeat for 12 hours. On alien worlds, traders paused. Diplomats exchanged nervous glances. Pirates quietly crossed human targets off their lists. Even the great galactic powers, the Velmari Concord. The Cathari Union sat up a little straighter. Humanity was no longer just another species. They were the guardians of their own. Back on Epsilon 9, the cleanup began in earnest. Volunteers from the fleet joined the colonists. They pulled bodies from rubble, fixed air filters, rebuilt comms towers with spare parts from wrecked ships. A chef from the Iron Mule set up a kitchen in a half-crushed warehouse and served hot stew to anyone who walked by. But it wasn't all kindness. In a sealed chamber near the old docking bay, a group of human engineers worked on something new. They took Jarkan weapons, studied them, then melted them down. From that metal, they forged a single plaque. On it, in Earth letters and alien script, it read, "Here stood Epsilon 9, attacked, defended, avenged." They mounted it on the highest remaining tower. It caught the red light of Erebos and shone like blood. Meanwhile, deep in orbit, the human fleet did not leave. They stayed. Not as guests. As guards, dropships patrolled the skies. Sensor drones scanned every approach. The Roughneck hovered over the main landing zone like a watchdog. Its weapons always lived. Captain Jessa Cole, standing on her bridge, watched a Jarkan prisoner transport dock. Let them see us, she told her crew. Let them remember what happens when you poke the hive. On the surface, a miner named Harlan, the one who'd killed a Jarkan officer with a pipe wrench, now stood guard at the medical bay. He didn't carry a wrench anymore. He carried a proper rifle, but he kept the wrench in his belt. For luck, he said. Children watched him. Some asked how he did it. He just shrugged. You protect your own. That's all. That idea spread like fire. By nightfall, every able-bodied human on Epsilon 9, colonist or soldier, stood a watch shift. No one was forced. They just did it. Because now they knew safety wasn't given. It was earned. And guarded. In the med bay, Dr. Chun stitched up a Marine's arm. The young man winced but didn't complain. You didn't have to come all this way, she said softly. The Marine looked at her. Yeah, we did. She didn't argue. Later, she walked outside. The stars were bright, and rainbows glowed red above. And around the moon, human ships hung in silent formation, hundreds of them. Like wolves circling a den. She thought of Earth, of forests full of things that bite, oceans full of monsters, skies that drop lightning like gifts, and humans, small and soft, who built cities anyway, who walked into the dark and said, "Not today." That spirit hadn't died out here. It had grown stronger. Now, the whole galaxy would learn what it meant to face the children of a death world. Not just fighters, not just warriors. Protectors. Back on the Valkyrie, Thorm received a coded message from Earth Command. It was short. Council meeting in 3 days. Be ready to speak. He knew what that meant. The galactic powers wanted to discuss humanity's actions. They would call it excessive, unstable, dangerous. He didn't care. He turned to his comms officer. Send a message to every human world, every ship, every base. The officer waited. Tell them, stand ready. This isn't over, because peace wasn't the end. It was the test, and humanity would pass it not with words, but with presence, with strength, with the quiet certainty that they would never again let their people fall without an army behind them. That night, as Epsilon 9 slept for the first time in weeks, the human fleet kept watch. No alarms, no attacks. Just the hum of engines. And the promise in every heart. Never again. Epsilon 9 was no longer just a colony. It was a symbol. Months had passed since the Jarkin came. The scars were still there, cratered landing pads, melted walls, the blackened skeleton of the old Cums Tower. But now, new buildings rose beside the ruins. Stronger ones, taller ones, built with steel from wrecked alien ships and pride from human bones. The Jarkin hegemony had surrendered. Not with words alone, but with deeds. They returned every stolen data core. They paid in rare minerals, starship parts, and medical supplies. They released every human slave they had taken from other worlds, even those captured years before Epsilon 9, and they dismantled their slave markets. Under human eyes, they did not do it because they wanted to. They did it because they had no choice. Humanity had not taken their worlds, had not bombed their cities, had not demanded their leaders' heads. That would have made them just another empire. Instead, humanity demanded accountability, and the galaxy watched. On the rebuilt plaza of Epsilon 9, a new monument stood. Not of stone, but of fused Jarkan armor, melted down and shaped into a single fist rising toward the sky. Beneath it, carved in a dozen languages, the words read, "We remember. We protect. We endure." Children played around it. Tourists from Earth and Mars came to see it. Veterans stood before it in silence. Among them was Security Chief Marcus Boone. He no longer wore a security badge. He wore the insignia of Epsilon 9 Defense Command, a new role in a new era. He watched a group of kids reenact the battle with sticks and toy ships, yelling, "Deathworlders inbound." As they charged each other, he didn't stop them. He smiled. That same spirit was spreading. Back on Earth, schools taught new lessons. Not just about math or history, but about unity. About what it meant to be human in a vast, often cruel galaxy. Children learned the story of Epsilon 9 not to scare them, but to remind them, you are never alone. In classrooms from Nairobi to New Shanghai, teachers said the same thing. If one of us falls, all of us rise. And they meant it. The fleet that had answered the SOS never fully went home. Some ships returned to patrol the outer systems. Others stayed near Epsilon 9. Now a fortress moon bristling with railgun towers, drone nests, and listening posts that could hear a whisper 3 light years away. But the real change was quieter. Alien traders, who once saw humans as loud and messy, now bowed their heads when docking at human ports. Diplomats spoke more carefully. Even the Velnari Concord, once the galaxy's self-appointed peacekeepers, now included human observers in their security councils. No one wanted to be the next Jarkin. Yet humanity did not boast. They did not parade their power. They simply lived, building, exploring, helping, but always watching. On Luna, shipyards worked day and night. Not to build warships, but strong, fast vessels that could carry aid or vengeance wherever needed. On Mars, scientists studied Jarkin tech. Not to copy it, but to understand it, so they'd never be caught off guard again. And in the void beyond Neptune, deep space scouts kept their eyes open. One such scout ship, the Whisper, drifted near the galactic rim. It was small, old, and painted with faded stars. On its hull, someone had spray-painted in bright red letters, "We come in peace, but bring the whole damn fleet just in case." Inside, pilot Rena Cho sipped recycled coffee and watched the silent stars. Her ship carried no weapons, just sensors, a comms array, and one encrypted beacon tied to Earth Command. She wasn't a soldier. She was a watcher, and if she saw trouble, she wouldn't fight it alone. She'd call home. Back on Epsilon 9, life returned, but not the old life. It was stronger, kinder, but harder. People locked their doors less, but trained with rifles more. They shared meals, but also kept emergency packs ready. They laughed louder, because they knew how close silence had come. Dr. Lyra Chun now ran a new medical center, one built with blast shields and backup oxygen. She treated miners, soldiers, even a few Jarkin prisoners who'd been wounded in the fighting. She didn't hate them, but she didn't forget. Mercy is good, she told her staff, but memory is better. Alea Rostova, the comms officer who sent the SOS, now trained a new generation of signalers. She taught them how to send the call, but also when to stay silent. The beacon is not a toy, she'd say. It's a promise, and promises must be kept. The children listened. In orbit, the Valkyrie still flew. Captain Thorne had been offered a desk job on Earth. He refused. "My place is out here," he said. And no one argued. He knew peace was fragile. That somewhere, someone would test humanity again. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not in 10 years. But one day. And when that day came, the fleet would be ready, not waiting in anger, but standing in strength. One evening, as Erebos cast its red glow over the colony, a ship from Earth arrived. It carried families, people who had lost loved ones in the attack, but still chose to come. They stepped onto the moon's surface, looked at the rebuilt homes, the new walls, the quiet sky, and said, "We're staying." No fanfare, no speeches, just presence. That was the human way. Not loud, not cruel. Just here. And if you hurt one of them, you'd learn what here really meant. Far away, in the heart of the former Jarkan territory, their leaders met in silence. They did not speak of revenge. They spoke of survival, of how to live in a galaxy where one species, small, young, born on a world that tried to kill them every day, had become something no army could break. They called them Deathworlders still. But now, they said it with fear. And respect. Back on the Whisper, Rena checked her long-range scans. Nothing but dust and distant stars. She leaned back, humming an old Earth song. Then she keyed the comms, whispered a sole command. All quiet on the rim. A voice crackled back. "Copy that, Whisper. Rest easy." She smiled. Resting was allowed now, but only because others stood guard, and they always would, because that was the lesson of Epsilon-9. Not that humans were violent, but that they were loyal. To each other. To their past. To the promise. that no one would ever be left behind. Again, as night fell on Epsilon 9, lights glowed in every window. Laughter rose from the mess hall. A child flew a toy ship down the street, whooping as it fired at invisible enemies. And high above, silent and strong, the human fleet watched the stars. Ready, always ready.